sale mixed in with your framework, mixed in with your tonality, mixed in with all the sales closings and approaches. You see, tie downs are so effective and are used so commonly in everyday language that we just don't recognize them, right? Every time an individual will say right to you, am I right? Everybody's looking for clarification, and they're looking for a what response? Correct, a yes response. They want you to respond in such a manner that becomes an agreement frame. So now we have to realize whenever we speak as a salesperson, we need to be professional enough to know that we have to tie it down to the bank. We have to realize that tie downs are the things that create a sale. Although a lot of salespeople, closers, as we do call them, what we're trying to make you into, there's 4 types of closing tie downs. Now it'll be standard, you have inverted, internal, and of course antagons. Let us begin. First, why do we use tie downs and do they really work? Why wouldn't they? Have you ever noticed? Most people have. Am I right? Nothing works unless you try it. Wouldn't you agree? You see, going back to why do you use tie downs and do they really work? Of course they do, don't they? Wouldn't you agree that they do? See, more importantly, to have an effective sales pitch, we need to get somebody to agree with us, but in such a manner that we don't seem devious or like that typical quote unquote car salesman that some of us get put into. And there's nothing wrong with being a car salesman. Matter of fact, you make a ton of money, although it's a category, just like an insurance salesperson, that it makes you ugly and they think like you're too harsh and you're trying to one call close them and pressure them into a deal. But it doesn't have to be that way. The way you have to use your agreement frames is going to be placed in such a way that people don't recognize that you're using them. Although you're slowly motivating somebody and persuading them to make the decision in which you're encouraging them to make, which is going to be the right one ultimately. Now, when we look forward, there's different variations of tie downs that we all have to use so we don't sound either redundant, we don't sound too cheesy, we don't sound like we're using too many pressure tactics, and we don't sound, of course, slick, right? Sometimes we lose the attention of our customers, am I right? And we have to bring them back into the conversation. Does that make sense? More importantly, there's standard, inverted, internal, then antagons. Tagons are most commonly used, and standard is the second most commonly used. When do you think you use a standard? At the end of a sentence, am I right? Of course you are. Is that correct? Isn't that true? More importantly, when you use inverted, inverted is going to be the opposite of a standard. It's going to be used at the beginning. Internal, guess where that's going to be? Internally, in the middle. A tag-on, that's going to be after a statement. Let's go ahead and proceed. A standard tie-down. You can never use a standard tie-down more than twice. The reasons why is become so death-defying to a consumer's ear. They will realize that you're trying to close them. So whenever you use a standard tie-down, be very, very quiet with it and do not overuse it, because they are the best ones to use, although you have to be subtle. So now they consist of 2 tie downs to the second power. 2 and 2. What I mean by that is this. You can never use them twice, but they consist of 2 tie downs inside of the framework. Choosing the upgraded version will make more sense. Am I right? They answer, I am, aren't I? Then you ask for clarification. So whenever you ask for anything, hey, choosing a higher deductible would make sense. Am I right? Yes, I am. I am, aren't I? Sales is about using tie downs, isn't it? Yes, it is, Mike. It is, right? Those are standard tie downs. Again, ask a question at the end of a sentence, then reaffirm the answer in which you receive. Tie down, and then tag it on, and then people ultimately will follow. Remember that. That's going to be your tool to success. Now, moving downwards, we have inverted tie downs. They're at the forefront of a sentence. So instead of the end, it's going to be inverted to the beginning. All you have to do is use the tie down in the beginning of the sentence. Isn't it true that using inverted tie downs will bring your closing rates up? Yes, it is. Well, there's an inverted question. All you have to do is place the questioning word in the beginning. Wouldn't it make sense to use more inverted tie downs inside of your sales pitch? Isn't it true that inverted tie downs work more justly than they do without them? More importantly, wouldn't you agree that is the best choice? Haven't you seen the new product line? Couldn't you imagine yourself in the new car? Mrs. Jones, couldn't you imagine yourself driving down A1A in that LeBaron convertible? More importantly, remember that people answer these questions in their heads and express answers through agreement frames. They will say, yeah, of course, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I understand that. People usually say yes to things that they aren't used to or that they really don't know because it's an agreement frame. If you're saying something, they feel obligated to say yes. Inverted, in the beginning, wouldn't you agree that the best choice is X, Y, Z? Wouldn't you agree that a copay going to the doctor would be better than a $50 doctor visit? Mrs. Jones, more importantly, does that make sense? It does, doesn't it? Isn't it true that it would make more sense to use the product than to not have it at all? You can use inverted tie downs after a regular statement, in between, or at the forefront. Now, moving on, we have internal. In the middle of a sentence, middle of the sentence. Now, internal, just remember that the tag on is always going to be used in the middle. So that would be haven't she, haven't they, isn't it true, wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't, haven't. When you go to the doctors, couldn't you see yourself using this benefit? After something happens, isn't that when we all wish we made the right decision? Just remember that we have to place everything right in the middle. Mrs. Jones, when you go to the doctor and you have a $35 copay, wouldn't it make more sense then you finish the sentence? Mrs. Jones, when you purchase this car, couldn't you see yourself driving down A1A? Finish the sentence and statement and close and close. Remember, internal won't be used as much as a inverted and or a standard, but it will be used simplistically to probe a close. Just remember, when you use internal tie downs, you have to finish the sentence structure in such a way that it requires the yes response, and then you tag it on. Always tag the sentence on with another tie down. When you use tie downs, wouldn't it make sense to use internal incorporated with standard tie downs? When you pitch your clients, couldn't you see yourself using more internal tie downs within the framework of your conversation? And that's exactly how you're going to use internal tie downs. More importantly, tag-ons, my favorite. What's your favorite color? Red? It is, right? Whenever you ask a question and somebody responds to you, you say, it is, right? More importantly, that makes sense, doesn't it? Whenever you get that answer, you have to figure out the correct words to use in order to get an agreement frame. So tag-ons are added to reflect commitment. Most people would agree that this is the best choice in your area. You agree with that, right? Tie down should be common sales practice for all levels of closers. Do you use tie downs? You do, right? A statement, then a question. All you're doing is tagging it on. Mrs. Jones, you want copays within your program. Isn't that right? Yes, it is, isn't it? Standard, then a tag on. All a tag on is getting an agreement frame, getting an answer, and then tying them down again. Just remember, you're going to tag on all of your tie downs to be the more efficient and more productive closer. Ask a question. Are copays important to you? They are, aren't they? Mrs. Jones, would you rather leather or would you rather cloth material? Leather. You would, right? Excellent. Always tag something on. Mrs. Jones, would you rather go look at the $500,000 house or the $600,000 house? You would, correct? Always require an answer. As soon as you get the answer of a yes, tag it on and say, I'm correct, right? That makes sense, doesn't it? You do, right? Haven't you? Hasn't she? Just remember those things. Confirm statements. Is red your favorite color? Yes, it is, Mike. It is, isn't it? More importantly, tag-ons are very simple and very effective. Now, here's some of the different types of framework that you can use. Haven't you, hasn't it, aren't you, couldn't it, shouldn't it, wouldn't it? Makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense, right? Right, Mr. Jones? Didn't it? Shouldn't? Wasn't it? Isn't that right? Doesn't it? Can't you? Won't you? Won't they? Won't she? Won't he? It, they, he, she, we, you, right. Remember, all these things right here, they're all different endings to haven't you. Hasn't it? Haven't they? Haven't we? Haven't you? Hasn't it? Hasn't they? Just remember, these are all going to be interconnected. There's so many different forms. You have to become more knowledgeable in the way you say things, more educated inside tie downs, because they're a framework to get you to probe for a close. Now, if the customer says it must be true, and each time your client says something helpful to your sale, if you tie it down, you're going to get a complete minor agreement. Don't you? Won't you? Shouldn't you? Remember that we have to always ask for an agreement frame. Through the use of tie downs, you can advance the sale to the point where the customer will be ready to make the final yes. But tie downs alone will not always do it. Next time, we'll talk about some alternative methods for moving towards the close. I'm going to talk you through some different kinds of methods of the close in our next module. Although I want you to get tie downs down, no pun intended. But you have to learn haven't you, shouldn't you, couldn't you, haven't they, hasn't she, couldn't they, couldn't it. You have to learn the different ways to ask because you don't want to sound redundant. I used to work for a VP of mine and he always used to say in every single speech, right, 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 trying to get everybody to agree with him, but it's so apparent, it's annoying. It's like that parrot on the shoulder. You have to disguise your agreement frames. You have to disguise the way that you do things. And if you do, you're going to be a closer. Now, moving forward towards all the modules, when you use tie downs, when you're productive, when you understand where to go and where you should go, you're going to become such a phenomenal closer that you're not just going to go up 100% or 200%, you're going to go up to an infinite amount of sales. Because this is a language, this is jargon in which we as closers need to learn. And do not be afraid to sound like a salesperson. You're not going to be that car salesman. You're not going to be, the used newspaper or magazine guy, right? You're going to be the guy that's the professional, that looks good, that sounds good, and people want to be part of. People are going to want to be part of your team. People want to be your clients. They want to be that valued asset that you're providing. So make sure that you do things right, say things the right way, speak the right way, and you too will go ahead and close, and you're going to make an infinite amount of money. Just put it to use.